My name's Adam, I'm part of the marketing team at StreamGo, and today we're going to be answering all your questions on virtual events. So let's get started.
So panels are interesting. When you have them in person, you'd have everyone right in front of you there on the stage. So I definitely suggest webcams are the way to go. Other things to think about? Do you have a fun, dynamic host leading the way? They can make or break a panel. And lastly, how do you project them to the audience in the broadcast? Do you have everyone on camera at the same time? Or do you use something that's launched using voice recognition? I'd suggest the latter actually. You know, it's quite often I've seen panellists, if they're all on the screen at the same time and they haven't spoken for 5 minutes, they're not great at behaving themselves and become a massive distraction.
I would recommend keeping your event on one link. That way, all your promotion, your confirmation emails, your reminders, they all go to the same place, and it's nice and easy for your attendees to know exactly where they're going. It also means that if your event is overrunning, a session is having loads of questions, then they're not going to miss out on anything. They'll be there maybe 5 minutes too early for their session, but they'll still be in the right place. If you have multiple links for different sessions, it might become a bit empty and fragmented for the users, and that attendee experience isn't quite the same as going to a conference hall as you would in a physical event.
So there's a lot of talk about hybrid events, and let's face it, it's what we're going to see going forward, I think, as virtual events have taken over for obvious reasons. And the move in the future, lots of people are going to think, why do I have to travel that far to get to a conference? I'm not really up for it. I don't have the budget, the time. So thinking about hybrid events of the future, what does that mean? You're going to have people in a room, you're going to have an audience, you're potentially going to have a stage, and then you're going to have an online stage and an online audience. And how do you mix the two together so it seems cohesive? Well, there's a number of ways. Let's get them on a platform so that they can network together, they can chat, they can meet, they can have video conference calls. Let's join them together as a networking group so that there doesn't feel like a complete gap. And that can be delivered with some sort of app or mobile link. The second thing I think about is how it's brought together from a staging perspective. So you've got people live on a stage, you've got people working remotely or who can't travel to the conference and be filmed and live streamed from that stage. Let's think about how we bring those together. So you might have a video screen on the stage, and that's how we bring the remote presenters in. It's a bit like watching the news and someone being brought in via video link. It's exactly the same principle. Bring them into the video screen and then we'll mix to them. It makes it look like a really nice, joined together piece of production.
So the first aspect you need to consider is your camera quality. Without a good camera quality, your audience may struggle to see you whilst you're presenting your virtual event. The second aspect is similar to the camera quality, but it's to do with sound. So you need to get a good microphone to ensure that whilst you're speaking, your audience can hear you very clearly, so they can pick up the information you're trying to transfer to them. The third aspect you need to consider is your lighting. So regardless of your camera quality, without a good lighting setup, your audience may struggle to see you. So you need to ensure that you've either got some good natural light coming through the windows, or you can set up some artificial light to bring the light levels up to a level which allows your camera to pick up a clear picture of yourself. To set up a virtual event, you'll need a virtual event provider. To choose a virtual event provider, you'll need to ask each provider a number of questions so you can choose the right one to suit your needs. You need to ask your virtual event providers about the interactive features they have on their platform. These interactive features are really important because they're what's going to be engaging your attendees. So you need to make sure you've got the right interactive features to suit your style of event. These interactive features could include audience polls, live chat, or even breakout sessions. The first thing you need to ask about is cost. Each different virtual event provider will offer a different level of service, and with these different levels of service are different levels of cost. So some will be more fully managed, these will be more expensive, or some will be more self-service, which will be more of a budget price. Lastly and most importantly, you need to ask your virtual event providers about sponsorship opportunities. Sponsorship opportunities like sponsor booths, for example, are really important because they allow you to generate revenue and actually cover the costs for the event itself.
Virtual events in multiple languages. Well, it can be a bit challenging, but if you've got a truly international audience, then why not? How can it be delivered? Well, there's loads of different ways that you can deliver translation in the same way as when you're delivering an in-person conference. Online, we can bring in live simultaneous translation, and usually we'd use a client's own translation service. You might ask why. Well, they're so used to their glossary of terms, what they're talking about as an organisation. If you bring a new team on board, they've got to learn all of that. So the lead time to the event, it takes a lot longer. So I'd suggest use your own translation service. Do you want the pages translated as well? So all of your landing pages, so that the journey for one particular language isn't just the spoken word, it's the written word as well. The other option, of course, is subtitles. And subtitles can come in, again, in a variety of ways. They could be always on. So if you've just got a main language and a translated language, always on subtitles could work. But then we can have toggle on or off and a drop down of multiple different languages for subtitles. A key here, I would suggest, is pre-record. Your life's going to be so much easier, your translator's life's going to be so much easier if it's a recorded piece of content that can be transcribed, and that means that it's written down post-recording. Once it's written down, it's much easier for the translator to learn the context around some of the words, make sure that it's absolutely perfect when it comes to translating, and those subtitles would be seamless. So there are loads of key benefits for delivering a virtual event for your organisation. Number one, help yourself stand out from a crowd. How many video conferences have you been on over the past few months? If it's anything like me, a lot more than before this all happened. Get your virtual event to really stand out by being creative about how you deliver it, being creative about the content, being creative about what sort of sessions you deliver and who delivers them. Delivering all of that in a beautiful virtual event setting is going to help you blast your competitors out the water. And the other key point I'd like to focus on is you can deliver it for a lot less than an in-person conference if you're smart. Your F&B budget doesn't exist, your travel budget doesn't exist, you don't have to hire rooms, hotels. You can be really smart about it and get it way under budget for the year. Let's not forget reach. You're limited for a physical event. You can only have as many people as the fire regulations allow you to have in a room. On a virtual event, a good platform has no limit. So in itself, you can invite way more people to your virtual event than you can a physical. And the statistics that we've seen, more people are converting from registration to attendance, and more people are attending than our clients are expecting to. So win-win. So data capture on virtual events, it goes way beyond what you can capture in a physical event. You've got sponsor stands at a physical event. They're only going to really capture the data of the people who are willing to stop by and leave their information. With a virtual event, all of the information that is captured at the point of registration then carries on through the user journey. Every behaviour, every engagement point, it's tracked, it's covered in extensive reporting. So, what stands did they visit? How many videos did they watch? How long did they watch for? What did they click? What did they download? What questions did they ask? What polls did they answer? The list goes on. But the point I'm trying to make is the user journey is tracked from the minute that they land on that registration page all the way through to when they leave, and then if they come back and watch things on demand. That's a huge data set that you can provide to your revenue generating sponsors. They can know who their most highly engaged user is. And that's gold dust to them. And it's gold dust to you too. You know, your sales team picking up the phone to the most engaged people or your most engaged audience. It's a shortcut to a winning deal in my. Let's not forget about making it easy for the user to leave their data with you. Make sure it's captured in the right way. Make sure all the checkboxes are in where they're supposed to be at the right time of the registration. And finally, make it really easy for your user. Think about call to action buttons that are just single clicks. Once they've been through the registration gate, you don't need to make them fill out forms again. One click call to action buttons, book a meeting. I'm interested to hear more. Make it easy.
Yeah, so sponsor lead generation, always a big thing that I always get asked about. One of the main things that we can do is replicate those exhibition stands that you see at physical events and bring them online. There's a few key things that you'll see from an online sponsor booth or an exhibition stand. And those three things tend to be, you've got the chat, so you can talk directly to your sponsor. You can have conversations online, you've got video content, so the sponsor can provide us some videos. So, you know, it could be a clip about their product or services, and it just kind of like showcases what they do and what the brand's all about. One of the third things is they've got resources to download as well. So the media packs that they would often hand out at a physical event, those can be made available to download. So when people do land on the booth, they can say, okay, yeah, that's the media pack I wanted to grab from the sponsor. Some other cool things that we can do, we could add a call to action to actually book a meeting later on. So if the sponsor's prepared to open up their diary, you might want to book a meeting with that person the following day, the following week, you know, at your own convenience. But then data is always going to be the key thing. So the data that we'll get from that page, everyone that's landing on that page, that sponsor will get access to that data. So if they have 100 people that land on their page during the event, there's 100 email addresses to go market to. If you've had like 10, 15 clicks on that call to action to book a meeting, then we've got some really warm leads come from that booth. And then other things you could think about within your sponsors is if they want to actually have a speaking slot. So rather than just having an exhibition stand, which is great, maybe they want to deliver a session, maybe they want to do a talk. So within that page where their live webinar presentation is going to be, you're going to get a different data set with that. You're going to get a data set that has tuned in specifically to watch their talk. So you've got a data set from your talk, you've got a data set from your booth, and you've always got, like I say, those call to actions that you can actually get leads coming through, booking appointments with your sponsors, and that's, at the end of the day, that's what they want. They want that lead generation from your virtual event. Yeah, so when it comes to ticketing for a virtual event, it's always something that I'll kind of ask the client first about. You know, if you were to charge a ticket for a physical event because of the content, whether it be an exclusive, then I believe that you probably should be charging for tickets for your virtual events as well. The content is going to remain the same, so you shouldn't be devaluing a ticket for your online event. If you feel like giving a discount is going to be appropriate, maybe it's because the online event isn't going to be as big, there's not going to be as many sessions, then again, that's something to consider. What some of my clients will always think about as well is if you're going to do a series of events, is possibly thinking about offering the first one free of charge. And it's just because if they've never delivered a virtual event before, they just want to make sure that they've got the audience there. They want to make sure that when the audience come to their event and they see their virtual event, that it's just as good as if it had been a live event and a physical event. So from there, for events 2 and 3, then they know that they can begin to charge again, because you say, okay, we've delivered it once and it was great. You've now got our trust in how credible that the virtual event is, that it's going to deliver the same content as your physical events, and then kind of pricing can be talked about from there. But yeah, it does depend on the client. It depends on the sector, the industry, the content that's going out. I mean, if you're delivering an internal comms event, I probably wouldn't expect to have to pay for a ticket. But it's really a decision that you guys need to think about. But that would be my piece of advice. So what do you charge your sponsors and exhibitors for your virtual event? How long's a piece of string, really? This is such an open question, and I can give you some advice on this, but again, it's never going to be a one-size-fits-all. consider what you would be charging at your physical events. You know, if you were to offer a stand at a physical event, you know, they are very expensive because you know that you're going to bring that sponsor the leads that they want. Think about how many attendees that you're actually going to be predicting that you'll get. If it's going to be a huge event, you know, you're getting 10,000 attendees on the day, then that's clearly a massive opportunity for your sponsors, and you should be charging for that as well. Likewise, if the industry that you're in or the product or services that you have is quite niche and you're thinking you're going to be getting maybe 100 to 200 attendees at your event, then again, think about how many warm leads each sponsor is going to get from that, and think about what the average order value is of that product or that service that they have. And from there, you can kind of start to piece together a reasonable price. There's never going to be one price for all sponsors. I think you're always going to get a scale. So think about how you tier your sponsorship. Do you offer a platinum sponsorship to a sponsor that would essentially get the data? It's all going to be down to data, isn't it? So how much data do they get? How many leads do they get? If a platinum sponsor were to pay X amount, they might get the registration data, so everybody that's registered for the event. If you wanted to look at maybe a gold or a silver level sponsor, these sponsors might get an exhibition booth. They might get a speaking slot as well, so they'll get data from their speaking slot, they'll get data from their exhibition booth. If it was a bronze sponsor, maybe they just get their logo on the site that clicks through to their website, but they don't get a booth. They don't get any real data, but you're getting traffic directed to their site. So think about how you can tier that. But again, there's never going to be a one-size-fits-all. I've seen some clients charge astronomical amounts for virtual events for a sponsor booth, and it's because their product is so well valued, and it's what they would have charged them if they'd attended a physical event as well. So that would be my piece of advice. Yeah, try and stay strong to what you would charge, but definitely think about how you can tier sponsorship pricing and what you can get for a different tier.
Measuring the return on investment for a virtual event, it's not too dissimilar to that of a physical event. You know, you're going to have the same goals. You know, why are you running it in the first place? Are you running it because you want to increase website traffic? Are you running it because you want to nurture or create new leads? Are you generating traffic and excitement for your sponsors? Is it about brand exposure? How do you measure all of those things just generally? The same KPIs can be aligned with your virtual event. But the benefit, or one of the key benefits of your virtual event is the data is really extensive to back those KPIs up. So make sure you know what your expectations are. And if you don't know them because you've never run a virtual event before, look into the market. There's loads of statistics out there, and we can help you too. Ask the questions, understand where your expectations should be set. How warm is your database? How expectant are they of a virtual event? How technically savvy are they? Is your virtual event set up really well? Make sure it can run and deliver on these goals. Make sure you've got that robust technology behind you to deliver an excellent event, and therefore your goals should be delivered.
For a virtual event game, I'd go with something that's nice and simple, nice and fun, easy for your attendees to get involved with. It wants to be a little bit competitive so that people can play off and chat about top scores, but nothing too complex. Something like Snake's pretty good, Pac-Man, any of those arcade classics, that's what you want to be aiming for. Yes, food is one of my favourite things about physical events too, and virtual events don't have to miss out either. I think for attendees you could do one of two things. You could maybe send things through the post, get some kind of letterbox snacks and treats. You could go healthy, or you could go a bit more unhealthy with chocolate, something like that, a bit of a treat for people. You could also maybe look at Uber Eats, Just Eat, Deliveroo, some high street coffee chain vouchers or gift cards. Maybe you could ration those out to your VIP attendees. Maybe there's some target accounts attending, and you could just make their experience even better. So I think, yeah, Nibbles, great idea. Virtual attendees do not have to miss out. networking is one of the main reasons why people attend events. Physical events, you get to meet people, peers, colleagues, also suppliers and vendors. I think virtual events, there is some way to go to meet with those standards, but there's things like chat rooms. That's great for attendee to attendee chat, sharing information about the sessions they've just watched, catching up with people if you can see their username. There's also a great extra, almost next step to that would be to allow attendees to create one-to-one chat rooms with other attendees, or maybe with suppliers and vendors that they're there to see. And that an extra step on top of that would be to make that video conferencing, video calls. I think that'd be really effective, video meetings between two people wanting to kind of network a bit more. For the sponsor side of things as well, you know, when sponsors are involved with events, they're often trying to speak to people who will be buying their services. So making sure that there's some networking capabilities for sponsors is really important for virtual events too. And I think video chat, one-to-one demonstrations is really, really vital. So yeah, I think chat rooms, one-to-one chat, and if you can, try and find someone who gets that video aspect in there as well. I think that will really step up and really kind of just do the next step in the networking for your virtual events. Right, quite a big question this one. What are some of the best ways to get the most out of your virtual event? So I think there's probably 3 areas to focus on. 1 is setting the right goal. 2 is making sure that the content is right. And number 3, it's about the data and the analytics you get behind that. And I'll run through a couple of examples. So let's say the goal is to generate leads for your business. So the content needs to make sure you drive registrations. It needs to be enticing, maybe get some really headline keynote speakers involved. But then once the people are in the event and signed up, you also want the content to be engaging and interactive. This is where the data and the analytics comes into it. So if you've got engaging content, you'll be able to see on the analytics side, you know, what questions did your attendees ask? Did they answer polls? And if so, what answers did they give to those polls or surveys? Did they find one session more engaging than the other? Did they drop off after a matter of minutes on one but stayed right to the bitter end of another one? This kind of insight and data will really help you generate business and custom from those attendees, making sure you're getting hot leads for your business. So that's one example. If another event, the goal is to drive sponsorship revenue, then the content needs to be focusing on the sponsors. So could you give them a sponsored slot in your event? How about the branding across the event? Is the content there right for the logos to be in the corner? Could they have an advert at the front or the end of some of the sessions on video? Those type of things would really make a difference to a sponsor. Having their own sponsor booth as well, with live chat, with the ability to host content, the ability to host a one-to-one meeting with people from the page. Those type of things would be really involved and engaged for a sponsor to get value from your event. The data on the flip side of that, so you'd be able to talk to your sponsors about who visited their page. You could also provide event data to them and say, okay, well, we had 3 sessions. Session A was the most well attended by HR managers. Session B was the most well attended by internal comms. You could break it down by the data that you've collected and let your sponsors know which content was the most engaging, so they can develop their own content plans and their own follow-up. Equally, you could also talk to your sponsors about the data you get about signups. You'd be able to tell where your signups came from. So let's say 50% of your signups came from LinkedIn advertising. That information to your sponsors would be really valuable, because they'd know that there is an active market on LinkedIn for their type of content, their target market, and they then might go away and do their own LinkedIn advertising. So there's some really good value that you can provide sponsors from the data within your event. There's just 2 examples of what I think you need to get from your virtual events. But yeah, like I say, the 3 things: make sure your goal is well defined, make sure your content fits that goal, and then make sure that whatever platform you're using can give you that insight, the data, the metrics, analytics, whatever you want to call it, give you or your sponsors or whatever the goal is, give you the right follow-up to make sure you can achieve that goal.